Welcome to Transforming and Thriving with best friends Brooke and Stacie,
a podcast dedicated to women sharing their inspirational stories.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Brooke, and today I am thrilled to be interviewing my co-host of this podcast and best friend, Stacie Weaver. Before we get started, I do want to share a little bit about Stacie and what she's here to share. Stacie Weaver, formerly Stacie Cooper, she was born in California, and she currently resides in San Juan Capistrano with her husband, Travis, and her adorable 3-year-old son, Aiden, as well as her dog, Kai. She has a doctorate in clinical psychology, and over the last 22 years, she has dedicated herself to the health and wellness space. She is a life coach for girls and women, meditation instructor, Pilates instructor, and an author. She's written self-help books for teens and a variety of children's books, which you can find on Amazon. Stacie's navigated numerous transitions throughout her life. She's experienced loss of loved ones, divorce, family illness, and career changes. Stacie's faced all of these challenges with grace and humility, and I admire her so much for her strength and courage. I met Stacie over 10 years ago, and I was immediately drawn to her enthusiasm for life, her compassion, kindness, growth mindset, and her unwavering optimism. Her and I went through some significant transitions together, and she was truly a role model and support to me. She's one of those humans that after being with her for a short time, you just feel better. You feel heard, seen, supported. Today, she will share something very close to her heart and deeply personal. Her experience with a difficult childbirth followed by postpartum depression. Her raw honesty, I believe, will resonate with our listeners, and I'm so grateful and inspired for her courage to share. Stacie, I'm so happy to have you as one of our guests. I'm excited for our listeners to hear your story, your insights, and incredible strength you've shown through it all. Welcome, and thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm in tears now. Thanks for the amazing introduction. Wow, that was neat hearing that for the first time live. Thank you. I'm excited to be here and a little nervous to share my story verbally on a podcast, but hoping it will be helpful to some people who are listening.
I'm sure it will. I know I shared a sneak peek in your bio, but can you share a little bit more about this experience and how it impacted you?
Yeah, definitely. So I like to think of it as my rebirth into motherhood at the age of 40. The beauty, the trauma, the messy mess of unplannedness and unpreparedness that went along with me. I think what a part of this experience was that had a major impact on me really is the whole process. From my conception to pregnancy, having COVID during my pregnancy, my traumatic week in the hospital, delivering my son when absolutely nothing went according to my plan, and the first few months postpartum. I think the whole experience profoundly changed me in many ways.
Yeah, that's a lot. So, I remember you sharing some of your experience personally, and then I read your chapter in the book Queen Bee. So I think it would be pretty powerful to hear you read it for our listeners. Would you mind doing that for us?
Oh, not at all. No problem. All right, I'm just going to start reading. I'll read part of it. The shoulds in our lives are stifling. My most stifling motherhood shoulds were how the birth of my son should go, how my postpartum recovery should be, and how I should seamlessly fall into this new role, this new balancing act of countless identities and responsibilities with grace and ease. This chapter is a glimpse into the beginning of this beautiful yet challenging season, wrought with whys, why nots, why me's, and why can't I's. But most importantly, my rebirth as a mother, an identity I never envisioned for my life. Control is an illusion. The plan was to have a plan and then let go of the attachment to the plan. I wanted a natural, in quotes, end quotes, birth. I had watched countless how-to YouTube videos to prepare, how to breathe, how to stay calm, how to avoid medication, how to use hypnobirthing, birthing balls, birthing tubs, birthing playlists, you name it. I convinced myself, I got this. I teach mindfulness and meditation. But I was forcing masculine expectations onto the profoundly feminine experience of entering into motherhood. The second I walked in for my 39-week checkup, I had to scrap my plan. All 20 bullet points on my beautifully designed birth plan, typed in 10-point font, were canceled out one by one over the course of a grueling, painful, gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching, soul-wrenching week in the hospital. It all started on a regular day with a regular prenatal checkup and a blood pressure cuff. I'd always considered myself pretty damn healthy. Sorry for the cussing. Pilates. I'm just reading.
All welcome here.
Okay. Pilates, yoga, hikes, bikes, green smoothies, meditation, plenty of time outside. Every time I went in for a visit with my midwives, it was quick, uneventful, and they'd comment on how I was healthier than most of their much younger patients. I was proud, prideful, not gonna lie. Until this visit, the BP monitor started beeping obnoxiously. The nurse awkwardly muttered something under her breath, scurrying out of the room. The midwife entered moments later, trying to act calm. I could see it in her eyes. Your BP is abnormally high. We need to run it again. It's probably a fluke. Keep your arm down, relax, breathe. Like the good student I'd always been, I followed along, practicing my meditation mantra in my head as I breathed slowly, citing research proving this could control my physical experience. That didn't work. The machine kept beeping loudly and incessantly, like an alarm, every time the cuff released its air and released its grip on my arm. I felt like a failure to my profession. I was sent down the hall for more labs. I went home, and again watched YouTube videos on preparing for natural childbirth. Ring, ring. Come back in. We need to do more tests. Don't worry, it shouldn't take long. I drove up, sure I'd get home in time to keep my afternoon Pilates session. Again, feeling like I had some semblance of control over my plan. I checked in. They led me back to the triage area and gave me a scratchy hospital gown. I was confused. I asked the nurse if I'd be out in time for Pilates. She took my BP again and gave me a look I'll never forget, a sincere mix of pity and concern. The midwife will come back to discuss your results. After 15 excruciatingly long minutes, she entered, inhaled deeply, and sat down next to me. I think it's time we call your husband. Uh-oh. I don't remember the details of the conversation. Only a few keywords. Preeclampsia, alarmingly high values, and immediate emergency medical induction. The polar opposite of what I wanted. Natural, non-invasive labor. Shit. There go the first 3 bullet points on my birth plan. Control, failed. Expectations, sabotaged. Scramble, make the calls. Who's watching our dog, packing our bags? I'm going to walk outside while we wait for my husband. No, sorry. Your BP is severely high. You're at risk for seizures. We can't let you walk around unsupervised. Well, at least there's no IV. That was my main priority. I'm sorry, we need to hook you up to magnesium drip, STAT. It's standard practice for preeclampsia. What does that mean? Bedridden, unable to get up and move. Tubes coming out of both arms, no privacy, constantly being monitored, hooked and prodded hourly, day and night. My worst nightmare. One more item X'd off the plan. And another, and another. The second my husband shows up, they're ready to start. The sense of urgency among the medical staff is palpable. They tell me the plan. Medicate and dilate. I detest medications. They recommend 2 right off the back. Cytotec to get things softened and opening, and Pitocin on a steadily increasing dose to ease my body into unnatural premature labor. 2 things I had vehemently opposed. The female body is not meant to dilate and open when it's not ready. They want to start with the least invasive option, a Foley catheter bulb. What is that? We insert it and inflate it like a balloon. It helps encourage a, quote, gentle opening. Gentle my ass. They put my feet in stirrups. They put the bed flat, which, having a large pregnant belly, can quickly make you feel dizzy or pass out. And then tell me to let my knees fall out to the sides and relax. She shoves a rubber tube up. Ouch. I've been to the OBGYN many times, but this was significantly more painful. Sorry, you're not dilated enough. We'll give it another try. She shoves the tube up, and again, I feel sweat pouring out my pores. I get shaky, clammy, nauseous. My husband is holding my hand, telling me to keep looking at him and breathe. I have no clue WTF is going on around me. I hear lots of beeps, people mumbling anxiously. Everything goes dark. A few minutes later, I'm shaking uncontrollably. The midwife is standing next to me. She looks embarrassed. The magnesium hit me too hard. That combined with being on my back for too long, 9 months pregnant, and having a huge rubber tube shoved up my too tight cervix had sent my heart into shock. A crash cart and 6 hospital staff had immediately rushed in after my heart almost stopped and my baby's. They would give me a break to rest. Ding, ding, ding. Next round. Try again. Shove the tube. No success. Pump more meds. No success. My body does not like being forced to open when it isn't ready. Tears stream down my face. Clench fists. I can do this. It works. 4th time's a charm. Increase the Pitocin. Drip, drip, drip. Now we wait for things to progress. It's been over 24 hours. Can I eat? I'm starving. No, sorry. Can I drink? I'm so thirsty. No, sorry. Can I walk around? No, sorry. 10 hours later. Thousands of contractions later. You're just not progressing as we'd hoped. We're so sorry. Doctors enter, carrying metal chairs. Place them around me in a circle. Clink, clink, somber tone. We need to discuss pain management options. We're so sorry. We know you wanted a natural birth. You're just not progressing. It's been so long. I'm exhausted. It's been so long. You're exhausted. I sigh, defeated. Yes, yes, fine. Whatever you recommend. Dr. Feelgood enters. He does it quickly. Icy, cold, sharp pain in my back. Tears stream down my face. I try to hide it. Be strong. Millions of women before me have done this. I am not alone. Hours later. We're so sorry. You're just not progressing. I already know what's going to happen. My worst nightmare. Being cut open, awake. The rest is a blur. Wheeling on a bed down the hall, fluorescent lights fly by overhead, entering a bright, cold, sterile room surrounded by faceless people masked in scrubs. Somber tone. You will feel a cool liquid entering your spine. Let me know if you can feel your chest. No, nothing. Your toes? No, nothing. Good. Familiar faces at my head. A curtain over my chest so I can't see below. It goes so fast. My husband is holding my hand, showing me pictures of my dog to distract me. Seconds later, I hear a scream. Do you want to see your baby? Dr. Feelgood holds up a mirror. All I see are my bloody guts spilled open on the table. Can you please move the mirror? There he is. I see my baby. He's healthy, they say. A wave of relief. I start shaking uncontrollably. Violent tremors, violent chills. They bring my baby to my chest and put him on me. He is shaking. I am shaking. We slow down. We stop shaking together. Our heartbeats sync. I had never imagined myself as a mother, but in that moment, my heart cracked open and I became his. The rest of the long week in the hospital is a blur. Bright lights, screaming baby, needles shoved in, blood drawn out, no humility. Nurses grabbing my boobs. Here's how you breastfeed, they demonstrate. Beep, beep, beep. Your BP is too high. You can't go home. You can't go outside. Sobbing, despairing, in pain. Just let me go home. Finally, days later, cleared to go home, for reals. We go home as a family. Deep breath. Deeper sigh of relief. We survived. I survived. This is my birth story. I read tons of birth stories before giving birth, but only the shiny, happy ones where things went seamlessly. I avoided the messy ones, the stories of perils, pains, setbacks, surgeries, traumas, and tragedies. I've always been a straight A student, so I thought I could plan and control the outcome by putting on blinders to the things that could go wrong. If I programmed my mind and used my training to visualize the outcome, I could ensure a positive, blissful experience. Okay, I'll stop there. I feel like that was a lot.
Wow, I have chills all over again. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Hearing you read your story was extremely powerful. To hear you talk about all the research and how you mapped everything out and how it changed in an instant, I think that's really relatable across so many experiences in life. You know, we get so attached to the outcome, like you said. Can you share with our listeners what things were like after the birth?
Yeah, of course. I feel like the postpartum period is something I knew nothing about and was totally unprepared for. I mean, of course, there is such beauty that comes from entering into parenthood and reaching a new level of unconditional love that you've never experienced. But there are also nitty gritty, messy, lonely, shameful, rageful, painful, triggering, terrifying parts, especially for someone like me who had not planned this most of my life and literally had had zero experience with babies previously. The weekly prenatal checkups and check ins literally dissolve into the ether once the baby's on the outside. I wondered where the support and resources go after parents are handed their baby and leave the hospital. I feel like this is a time when I believe they're needed the most.
Right.
Reassurance, encouragement, basic resources, basic help, validation, normalization, information, all the shins. All I got was a pamphlet on postpartum depression and an offer to call the doctor if needed. And I feel like during my pregnancy and delivery, I was like a bug under a microscope. But as soon as I left the hospital in a wheelchair, unable to barely move after an abdominal surgery or take care of my own basic needs, questioning my sanity many times with a perfect little human being named Aiden to care for nonetheless at the same time. And in the aftermath of coming home, I felt so scared and unprepared. I remember feeling helpless and useless, immobile in my bed, having to rely on my husband to help with everything because I literally couldn't move, feeling angry and ashamed with myself as a woman who wasn't doing it all, doing it right, or doing enough.
Hmm. I imagine you felt like you were alone, it seems, not to mention you had these unrealistic pressures you felt to just get over it, make it happen. I know there are so many women out there who have gone through these same feelings and experiences or are currently going through them. What would you say the hardest parts were for you afterwards, and what or who helped you?
Yeah, so I guess to start with the first part, I know my story is neither new nor unique, but my goal now is to help new moms, especially older and professional moms like me, who are grappling with how to recover, maybe how to receive help or accept this new role. Feel like they're not alone, are not crazy, and are doing their best. I feel like no one can ever truly prepare you for parenthood. Maybe some more than me, because I literally had no idea coming in.
Mm.
Even if new moms say they're doing great aside from little sleep, I know firsthand there's so much more to the story. It's a beautiful time, of course, but it can also be one of the most physically and emotionally taxing times for new mothers. The hormonal shifts are extreme, and they sent me on an emotional roller coaster many times a day for quite a while. And there's a lot of shame around admitting this and stigma around asking for help or complaining. I
Mm.
know a lot of that was self-inflicted, but I think that's something that needs to be talked about more. And I
Right.
only later learned that you have the biggest hormone shifts in the shortest amount of time in your life immediately after you have your baby, and then also when you quit breastfeeding. And I was not aware of that going into it. I have mad respect for people who do it alone. I cannot imagine. I barely hung on by a frayed thread at times with support. Since, I mentioned I never had experience with babies, I came into this flying completely blind. This is hard for me to admit, but I never had a motherly instinct or felt my biological clock ticking. I was always afraid to hold babies, worried I would break them. uh,
Mm.
and I prepared myself for a natural birth and recovery, not preeclampsia and an emergency cesarean. I accepted physical support and emotional nurturance from my husband and our doula. Thank goodness for them in the first few nights. Our doula had a nurturing and non judgmental nature, which is exactly what I needed in my darkest moments of this early postpartum fog, as I like to think of it. Their love and help allowed me to remember how to nurture and mother myself once the season had passed. Even little things like bringing banana bread or bringing me water, asking if I need a little break to sleep and tend to the baby, little things like that were just so helpful. Some of the things I remember in those initial hazy weeks were feeling, I think I mentioned this, ashamed, but part of my shame was feeling annoyed when well meaning loved ones wanted to come visit to meet our baby. It just felt insurmountable and overwhelming at times to have the energy to get up and greet them since I was recovering from a trauma, a major abdominal surgery, and our whole household was just under severe sleep deprivation, which completely makes you crazy. I now know.
Yeah.
My innate need to be a polite and gracious host was really hard for me to bypass and ignore. However, our baby constantly slept or ate or cried or peed or pooped. So any planned visit was stressful since it interrupted one of these and my desperate need for rest and a moment of peace in a crazy household with crazy hormones. I remember feeling really mad at myself for being irritated since I, always appreciated their love and support. And I feel so grateful to have such an amazing support system. But I also have had a hard time saying no out of guilt in my life. So I had to work on this through this process. Simple, how are you doing? What do you need? Texts were most appreciated by loved ones, friends, and family. And I remember one specific example. I had a girlfriend who had a delicious 4-course meal dropped off at our doorstep the night after we got home from the hospital. It was the first real dinner we had had in over a week, and it made me cry when I
Oh,
stepped
how
at the
nice.
door and just got a sweet text from her, not needing anything back in return. Just, she had been through it herself. And yeah. Oh, and my 12-year-old dog, Toby, who I referred to as my first child, my Labrador, he was largely forgotten during that period. This was really hard on me. As you know how close I was to Toby. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, he was definitely, I treated him like a child. He usually was showered with love and affection on a daily basis. But I remember Toby quietly, patiently sitting by and waiting for us to feed him and take him out a few times a day. I had to muster my almost non-existent energy at times to keep myself awake and functioning, and I felt like I was serving as a cow supplying milk for my hungry little guy. Um, so I guess all in all, I feel like I went in clueless to this whole motherhood experience. The first few months, I continued to feel ill-equipped, and I started relying more and more on those I trusted to guide me through this, foggy, as I said, mucky, messy mess that it was. At times, I felt like I crawled and clawed my way through. In some of my darkest moments, I found myself curled in a ball on the floor of my closet, hopeless, feeling lost, angry at myself, screaming, banging on the floor. My poor husband, who's my grounding force in the house, but sometimes doesn't know how to handle like my intense emotions normally, much less on this crazy hormonal roller coaster. Was amazing, but probably was like, "What the F do I do, and how do I handle this?" But he did an amazing job of keeping me grounded. So I think, it's important to also recognize the support people that are there for you and what they go through and how hard it must be for them too. And I hope I shared my appreciation enough times with him, but if not, maybe he will listen to this and hear it again. Um, but, no one really talks about that stuff enough, and I felt like I lost my mind quite a few times there in the early postpartum period, and I was too ashamed to share this with loved ones at the time. Partly I was just trying to survive, and, partly I was just ashamed and trying to feel like I could figure it all by myself, and something was wrong with me and everyone else was doing it better. And, I thought maybe it was because I just didn't have experience with kids that I was struggling so much. Or yeah, and I think the hardest part was having to quit breastfeeding cold turkey. That's a long story, but the same week as I grieved the death of my first child, Toby, that was really hard. And I think during that period, I particularly felt like I lost it for a little while. Yeah.
It's such a difficult and painful thing that you went through. And like I said earlier, relatable. You're right. Not very many people talk about it. And it's almost this expectation to just kind of move through it. And I'm so glad that you had some support and were able to lean towards accepting the help. But I imagine that's really difficult to navigate when you're going through all the physical, emotional, mental transitions. I wish, obviously, you never had to go through those things. I do appreciate you sharing. It's such a vulnerable and personal thing to talk about and sharing with everybody. But I really feel like this is going to help so many. What would you say that you learned the most from this experience?
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot. Well, and I also want to acknowledge, I know, you mentioned about the support again, and I feel so grateful to have such amazing support in my life. I have so many people who, after I got over my own stuff in my own head about like feeling prideful and like ashamed, and, once I finally accepted support, I mean, you were one of the most important people that helped me through all of this too. So I just want to acknowledge you as well. I'm very fortunate to have amazing friends who love me unconditionally and are there for me and know to ask, like, how can I support you, rather than just like giving support in ways that you assume I need. I don't know if you realize how much that helped me through all of that. So I just want to thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. So I feel very fortunate. But what I learned, I would say I learned hard lessons of humility and resilience. I learned how to ask for help as I had no choice at times. I learned how to set boundaries for the first time in my 40 years on this planet.
Mm.
And often those boundaries were my mama bear way of protecting Aiden, this new little precious boy who had captured my heart that I, wouldn't have created just for myself. And then somewhere in the haze of all of this madness, crying, pain, loneliness, fear, anger at myself for not doing it better, I found my strength and sanity again a lot through a couple of things. Movement, and that's always been something that's really helpful for me. Moving my body, moving through things, connection, and spending time in nature. Those things grounded and balanced me. Specifically, yoga, Reiki, Pilates, walks, doing spin, sharing my emotions with friends, finally, crying, screaming, laughing, writing that chapter that I read some of, whatever it takes. And I've since been trying to share my experience more and be open with my struggles and move the energy through me in as many ways as I can think of. So I feel like myself again, or, a new and improved version of myself, hopefully, and be better for those I love. I've also labeled myself as highly sensitive. I've taken a test. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that whole theory, but highly sensitive persons, I score 100% on that test every time I take it. And
Yeah.
I always thought that was like a weakness, but I've reframed that as a superpower that allows me to connect to myself, to other people, and life on a profound level, and just trying to find ways to capitalize on that instead of feel like it's a weakness, which also relates to needing to have boundaries and taking time to recharge myself. So I'd say all in all, learning to mother myself really allowed me to fully embrace and flourish in my new role as a mother, which is always still in process, which is why I love that we call our podcast Transforming and Thriving, because we're always in process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're moving through stuff, right? We're moving through stuff and we need tools and things to help us move through that. And like you said, this is part of the podcast is the present tense. We are going to move through it as a community and create these resources and share these ideas. So what additional parting advice would you say you have or other tips that you want to leave us with?
Well, I don't think there's any one right way to go through all of this or enter motherhood, but I do believe withholding and hiding and isolating are harmful.
Mm.
So I guess I would say do what you need to do to move energy through you and remind yourself you're stronger than you think. You've done hard things. You can continue to do hard things. Mother yourself, nurture yourself as you would a dear friend or your own child. That has helped me because I do those things better than myself. So seek out support from those who have been through it or those with whom you feel safe, loved, and validated. And just remember you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're doing your best. I am a nerd and I love acronyms and they help me remember things better. So I came up with an acronym that
Yes.
helped me and
Love
it's very relevant. It's MAMA.
Okay.
um, so the first M is movement, as I've mentioned like 5 times on this podcast already. Moving is very important for me. So move your body and move stuff through you. And then the first A, it's kind of 2 parts. It's about accepting, but accept your feelings because I had a hard time with that. And I feel like the more you're able to accept all of your feelings, it allows you to then move through them. And, you have to express them too. And then accept support from others. But the caveat to this is as long as it feels supportive to you, your family, and your needs. That was a key part for me that I learned. And
So
then
important.
yeah, totally, right? Not just accepting all support, but really feeling into like, okay, is this supportive to me in this moment? And then when it's not, like finding ways to have healthy boundaries and have conversations and say thank you, but no, not right now.
Yeah, advocate for yourself.
Totally. And saying not right now is okay. And then the second M is music. That's been huge for me. So listening to music that feeds your soul, music that makes you feel good, that's empowering, lifts you up, encourages you, or calms you down. I have lots of playlists for different moods. And I had a calm me down playlist for when I was going through my labor in the hospital, but that was one of the things that I had planned out before, and I created this whole amazing playlist I was gonna listen to while I was rolling around on my birthing ball and, like, moving around, so that all in all, music, I feel, is very important and can be extremely helpful and healing. And then the last A is affirmations or mantras that support and encourage you. So M, movement. A, accept your feelings and accept support that's supportive. M, music. And then A, affirmations or mantras. So MAMA, that's my parting acronym advice.
I love that. I love it so much. It's easy to remember. These are things you can do proactively or when you're sensing triggers or when you're needing calm or needing more energy. So good. I love it. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, I really loved getting to hear your story from another angle and kind of a deeper dive. I appreciate just you being vulnerable. It takes a lot of courage to share something so close to your heart and such a traumatic transition that you went through. You've become even stronger and resilient, and the listeners out there now get to hear this and be inspired by you. I am inspired by you all the time. So to be able to get this out there is very meaningful to me.
Well, I'm inspired by you as well. Ditto, right back at you, my friend. And happy to be here and share, even though it made me nervous. I feel it's important. I wish I could have heard something like this when I was in the middle of it. So I hope it helps someone out there listening.
Absolutely. To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of Transforming and Thriving. We'll be back every other Monday with more inspiring stories. Please follow us on your favorite podcast app and follow us on Instagram so you can be a part of this community and stay up to date with each episode. Feel free to leave a review so that we can get your valuable feedback and other people can find these powerful stories. We're all in this crazy life together, so let's move through it together. See you there.